Hello and welcome to the fourth week of Intro to Android Development. Today we're going to be covering list views and recycler views, probably some of the most fundamental parts of modern apps today. Now, list views and recycler views. These things are going to be in pretty much any app. Do tell me, what app do you know that doesn't have a lot of lists in it? It has become the de facto way of interacting with things on your phone to go through a long chain of content. It has become essentially how we interact with all of our apps. And so it's used in Facebook, Venmo, podcast apps like Podbean, YouTube, the works. Everything is done in long scrolling lists. And as such, Android has a lot of ways to deal with that. And we use it a lot in app devs apps too. So we use a lot of, we use a RecyclerView in the homepage of Eatery. And also use it in the detail pages, also use list views in the detail pages of each dining hall. But you'll notice straight off that these, there are some differences between the screenshots we've used and the examples we've used. And they'll become apparent in a moment. So, RecyclerView is a lot better on performance than ListView. It's almost a direct enhancement from the previous design. ListView is the older one, RecyclerView is the newer one. However, as you can tell, and I'll say this, you can actually do anything you can do with RecyclerView, you can do a ListView and vice versa. They both can work for really implementing any kind of scrolling list. It's just that RecyclerView is a lot more memory efficient about how it does things. It has a lot more optimizations because it's newer, and therefore is often better than using ListView. But then why would you ever use ListView? Well, first off, you have to import RecyclerView and specify a custom adapter. You can't use any default ones. And then you have to set up your adapter, the view holder inside the adapter, and the binding to the view. There's a lot of little... It's a lot better in Kotlin than in Java, but you have to set up a lot of things for RecyclerView. So the overall use between these two things is that in a list view, it's simple, plain, and easy to implement. You pretty much can just set it up in about 7-8 lines and you're set. So here, just create a list, and there's even default array adapters built in for list view stuff that you can just use to display text, and it will. It doesn't reuse memory well. It does have some optimizations for using memory. They weren't completely dumb when they designed it, but it's not very efficient on RAM. And you generally use these things then for unchanging text lists, something that you don't want to have to debug later on, but something that won't be infinite. Because if it is changing a lot or infinite, you're going to run into RAM problems, and your emulator is not going to like it. RecyclerView, it's a direct upgrade. It is almost always the better framework. However, it's more complex to set up. So it has no default adapters. If you're going to use it, the thing that essentially you set up both for both list views and recycler views, you set up an extra layout file that contains what you want to show in each list box. And Leslie's going to demonstrate this. And then you set up something to fill that out. It's called an adapter. There are default ones and default layouts provided for list view, but RecyclerView, you set it up yourself. It's comparatively a bit more difficult to implement, but as you can tell, there's just two similarly sized files that you have to set up when it comes to a RecyclerView. And it has some memory reuse quirks. So a RecyclerView will take the thing that just went off the screen and reuse that block and fill out new things inside of it, and then put it up top so that it keeps on scrolling infinitely like a treadmill. However, you might find that it kept one of the, like if you put a checkbox in them, it might stay checked as it went up to the top, even though you didn't check that checkbox for that particular box. So there might be some memory reuse quirks that you might have to account for. But overall, RecyclerView is the generally better view to use. Of course, ListView and RecyclerView are conceptually pretty simple to comprehend. They're lists. They're lists that you use in the app. But, it's the implementation that is a bit harder to work out. So this is why pretty much lecture's over already. And we're going to hand it over to Leslie for the demo. So she can get you through all the nooks and crannies of like what these list views do and how are you supposed to put data in them, fill out these cool blocks that will scroll, and everything you need for the homework. So enjoy.
Hey guys, today I will be showing you a demo on how to implement a list view in a recycler view. And hopefully by the end of the demo, you'll understand when to use one over the other. And I'm just going to preface this demo by saying that I may be copy and pasting a lot of code. And the reason why is because no one really memorizes how to implement a recycler view or a list view. Oftentimes we just take template code from Android and we modify it to fit our need. So you see here on the screen that I already have a project created, and we're going to go ahead and add a list view to the layout. So I'll just do list view. I want my width to be match parent wrap content for the height, and I'm just going to add in the ID. Okay, now I'm going to go inside the design view and add my constraints. So I just want this list view to be centered. So I'm going to set the bottom to top. Oh, that's not what I want. I want 0 margin. Okay, now it looks centered. Maybe I want to add some padding. So I'm just going to do 20. Nice, so it looks centered. Now we're going to go inside our main activity, and I'm just going to add my my list view variable. So late init var list view, and I'm going to add my list view adapter as well. Adapter, and it's going to be array adapter of strings. So my list view is going to contain an array of strings. And your list view can honestly contain like any object that you want it to, but in our case, it's going to be a string. List view adapter equals to array adapter. And you'll see for this array adapter that it takes in 3 parameters, the context, the resource, which is the resource of the layout, and a list of objects. So let's create our list of objects first. Let me do Android phone equals to array of 1 plus Sam. And so, it froze. Okay, and since we're inside of activity, we have automatic access to the context, so we can just do this. And let's see, the second parameter is the resource of a singular cell within our list view. And what's really cool is that Android actually has a lot of layouts already built in, so we can just use one of them. So we'll just do android.r.layout, and you can see the list of all the layouts that's already pre-made for us. In our case, we just want to use the first one. And then let's just add our list. And then finally, we just have to set the ListView adapter to the custom adapter that we created. Nice. I'm just gonna run it. Nice. And now you can see that we have our list view and it's centered on the screen. And as you see in the code base, it's actually really easy to build a list view. It only takes like 4 lines of code. So in your app, if you have a very simple list where it just only contains strings or maybe images or something, it makes a lot of sense to create a list view because it just saves a lot of time. And creating a list view also makes a lot of sense if your list is not changing very often and there's not a lot of cells. But if there are a lot of cells, a list view is not the greatest list to use because it doesn't have great memory management. So next I'll be showing you how to create a recycler view, which is normally the recommended list to build, especially if you are creating very complex layouts. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete all the code we just added. So for building a recycler view, there's actually several steps. But the first thing we have to do is to go inside our Gradle and implement a recycler view. So I'm just going to rip it from our demo page. And what's really interesting is that you would think that by now the recycler views are automatically like, I guess like a library that exists within Android Studios, but for some reason we always have to import it. So I'm just going to sync my Gradle. Okay, so for our RecyclerView demo, we are going to build a very simple to-do app. And in my to-do app, I just want to be able to add new tasks and mark these tasks as either completed or incomplete. So to do that, I am actually going to create a model class. So we could create several lists to represent a data within a singular cell. We can possibly like create a list for just the task name, and then another list for representing whether or not the task is completed or incomplete. But it's often hard to, I guess, like keep track of all these different lists. So it makes a lot of sense for us to create a separate class where we can represent a singular cell. And to do this within Kotlin or Android, we'll just create a data class. So I'm just going to call it to-do item model. And this is a data class. And I don't need these brackets. So within our model, we just want 2 attributes. We want an attribute to represent the task name. So that can just be name, or that can just be a string. And then we want something that represents whether or not it's completed. So let's just do is completed. And that can be a Boolean. And this is our data class. And what's really great about Kotlin is that you don't have to create your getters and setters. It's automatically created for you. So for example, to use a getter, let's say we have a to-do item called like to-do item. All you would do is that you would just, to get like maybe the task, you would just do this as the getter. And then for setting it, you would just do to-do item dot task equals to new task. So getters and setters are automatically created, and it saves a lot of code and a lot of like bloatware. Looks good. So our second step is to create a custom layout for each individual cell. So we could use a pre-made cell or pre-made layout that Android already created, but in our case, we kind of just want to create our own custom version. So I'm just going to create a new layout. And I'll just call it to-do list. Oh, I'll just call it to-do single cell. Okay, and in the cell, I want a radio button to represent if the task is completed or incomplete. So I'm just gonna, wait, I don't want that. So let me delete that. I want a radio button. Let me zoom in. And you can see that in this radio button, we already have the text included, so we don't need to add another text view. So I'm just gonna center this radio button. And I'm also going to constrain it to the top. Let's see. I don't want to set the text yet, so let me delete that. Okay, that looks pretty good. Radio button. Nice. Now we need to create the adapter. So this is a custom adapter that is used for our RecyclerView. And I already have some template code here to help me set it up. So I'm just going to uncomment all of this. Also uncomment this as well. And you see that there are 4 things we have to implement. The first thing is the view holder. This is our custom internal class that allows us to set what UI components are within each cell. The second one is our onCreateView holder. This is where we inflate the actual layout. The third method we have to override is onBindView holder. This is where we do all the work in terms of setting the information inside of the cell. And the fourth one is getItemCount. And this determines how many cells that the RecyclerView creates. So our to-do adapter is actually a new class that we created. Oh, let me delete that. Yeah, so it's a custom class that we created, and it implements the RecyclerView adapter. And you can see that our RecyclerView adapter takes in our custom view holder. So to-do adapter view holder. And inside our adapter, we want to take in our list of objects. So let me just do data list equals to, let me see what our type is. Okay, it is, let me just steal this. We're just going to have a mutable list, and this makes sense because our list will be changing in size as we add new tasks. And this will be to-do item model. And because this is a custom class that we created, you could technically enter in as many lists as you want or as many attributes as you want. So if you have a very complex adapter, you can add in multiple lists and use it within your code. But in our case, we only want a singular list. And then here, we just want, let's see, we just want to find view by ID. So let's set our variables here. So val status, let's do radio button equals to find view by ID. And you see here, we don't actually have access to find view by ID, so we need to use our item view. Find view by ID, radio button. Okay, so normally inside your view holder class, you would just you would just do find view by ID for all the UI components within your singular cell. And then inside our second to-do, you would inflate the view. So you'll notice that this is very similar to what you see inside onCreate. So we have something similar where we have like set content view, and this kind of inflates the view for you. But in this case, we want to inflate the layout of the singular cell. So let's do r.layout.todo singular cell. And let me just format this. Nice. And then inside the second function, we want to do all the work in terms of setting the information to all the UI components within this cell. So I just want to do, let's see, we call the view holder. So we don't have direct access to status or any other information, or let me not call it status, let me call it radio button. But we can just call holder.radioButton and we have access to it. Let's see, is checked. This determines whether or not the radio button is filled in, equals to to-do list dot get position dot is completed. So to determine which object is attached to this view holder, I guess, you would use the position information that's given within the parameter here. So you would just get your list, get the position, and then call the attribute. And let's also do radio button.text equals to-do list dot get position.text. What do I call it? Task. Nice. And now we want to set our click listener for the radio button. So we can just do viewholder.radiobutton.set on click listener. And I'm just going to take a quick peek because I forgot the code. Let me just copy it over. So I'll explain what the code means. We have our old item that we get using our position, and then we want to override this old item because once you click on a radio button, it should change the status. So in our case, we should do is completed. This should be is completed. And a really easy way to change parameters within an object in Kotlin is to use this copy method. So basically, you would add in the attribute you want to change and set it to the new attribute. And every time you change information within your data list, you have to call notify dataset change so that the recycler view knows to change its view. Otherwise, if you change your list but you don't call this method down here, your recycler view won't change. Nice. So finally, we will just have to implement the last method. So in our case, we'll just do to-do list dot size. And this way, every time our list changes size, get item count will return the right number of cells. Nice. Now our final step is to actually tie everything together. Or actually we have to create our layout first. So within our main activity, let me just go to the design view. We want to have something that allows us to input the task and something that displays the task. So I will include, I'll include an edit text. So let me just bind it to the left and the top. And I want to include a button so that way I can actually enter the task into the list. So let me just bind it to the top and the right. And I'm just going to bind them to each other. Let's see. Oh, why don't you want? Okay. See, wrap content. Okay, that looks good. And we can just add in, oh my god. Okay. Let's call it edit text. Nice. I'm just going to add in my recycler view at the bottom. So recycler view. And let's see, our width will be, let's do match parent and then wrap content. And I'm just going to add in an ID plus this. And it's going to go into my design view. Ooh, that's not what we want. Let's see. I want to set the top of this recycler view to the bottom of the edit text. So layout constraint. Oh, it should be app. Layout constraint. Let's see, I want to constrain the top to the bottom up. I'm just going to apply a margin as well. Android margin top. Let's give it like 50 dp. Okay, that looks pretty good. And I want to add some padding to the sides as well. So let me just add padding, maybe 20 dp. And so this can be 30. Okay, looks good. Let's just run it to make sure that it works. Or let's run it to make sure that it looks fine. Ooh, okay. That looks pretty good. Actually, what I might do is I might apply the padding to the entire layout because I want some padding for the edit text as well. So let me just delete this and apply it to the top. What happens if I do match parent? Oh, it's not what I want. Okay. I mean, this is fine. Actually, I kind of want to move the button because I feel like it's too centered. I actually want to center the edit text rather than center the button. Oh, I should also add it. Oh, I think it'll be fine. So let me delete this. Oh, okay. And for here, I just want to attach this to here. Okay, now let's rerun it. Nice. Okay, that looks a lot better. Okay, cool. So let's add our recycler view to our activity. So private late init. Private late init val equals RecyclerView. And I need to add a few other things as well, but I don't quite remember what they are. So we're just going to steal from the demo transcript again. Okay, so we need an adapter and a manager. So I'm just going to copy that over. And we also need to set the adapter in a manager, and this is also just like template code that people use. So you don't really need to understand exactly what it means, but it's also very self-explanatory. You really just set the manager to the context of the main activity, and your adapter, just like the list view, takes in your data list. And then we call this RecyclerView. RecyclerView. Okay, so we also need a list to represent our data, so we can just do private. I'm just going to copy it over right here. And you'll notice that we have a mutable list, and this means that we can modify the list. And it also takes in our models, so to do item model. So instead of taking it in like a string or image, we just take in our model. Nice, so it all looks good. And I think this should be it in terms of, oh no. So this is it in terms of setting up the recycler view, but we also need to set up our button because we want to be able to add new tasks to our list. So private var, or private init var, add button. And we're going to set up add button. Button equals define view.id, i.id dot button. And now we just want to add a click listener. Okay, so every time we click on this button, we just want to add the new task that's within the edit text. So I'm just going to copy this over as well. Okay, we also need to create our edit text object. So in our edit text. Okay, and I'll go ahead and explain what every single part means. So we can just ignore these lines for now because it's not important to running our code. So basically we want to check that the edit text is not blank. Otherwise we don't want to enter in like a blank task. And if it's not blank, we want to basically take the information and create a new model object. So we can just do 2D item model. And the parameters it takes in is incompleted. Obviously, we're adding in a new task that's not completed. And the task. And notice here how we use toString. If I decide to delete that, it would actually throw an error. And the reason why is because a text inside of an edit text is actually an editable object. And theoretically, it's a string. But because this is object-oriented, we want to make sure we are using the right type of objects. So in this case, we'll cast it into a string. Okay. And then I'm just going to uncomment out these lines. So this line just makes sure that the edit text clears itself every time I click the add button. So actually, let's just see what happens if we don't add this line of code. And this bottom code just makes sure that the keyboard lowers itself every time I click the add button. So we'll just go ahead and run it, and it should work. Why did it crash? Did it crash on me? Late init property. RecyclerView is not initialized. Oops. Okay. Let me initialize my RecyclerView. Find view.id. RecyclerView. What do I call it? I don't call it a list. Okay, and let's just run it again. Nice. I'm going to go ahead and add my task 1. And you see when I click the add button, nothing happens, right? But if I close the keyboard, then our task shows up. And then if I add in task 2, the task will show up if I close the keyboard, right? I guess not. Interesting. Let's see. Task 2, add. Okay. Well, I'm not quite sure why it's happening, but we want to lower the keyboard after we click add because it's super annoying to have to close the keyboard every single time to see the information change. So I'm just going to uncomment this out. And we also want, let's see, I want to import this. And we also want to clear the edit text after we enter in our task. Because oftentimes once you create a task, you don't want to create the same task. So I'm just going to go ahead and rerun it. Okay, and let's try again. Task 1, add task, nice, task 2. Interesting. I think what is happening is that our layout is probably wrong somewhere. I think something is wrong. So let's see. What is this? Wrap content. I think I want this to be wrap content. So let me try again. Nice. Okay, so what was the issue was that we had our height set to match parent. So what happened was that for task 1, the entire layout of the cell actually extended all the way to the end of the parent. But once we change it to wrap content, everything shows up. So task 3, and we're adding one more, task 4. And you see, we can set each task to completed. We can also set it to incomplete if we mess up. So let's just do one more thing in this demo. Let's actually sort this list so that all the incompleted tasks show up at the top and all the completed tasks show up at the bottom. And to do this, we can implement a comparable class. So let me just do comparable. I think it's to do item model. And why is it freaking out? I just want to implement the members, compare to. So I think I just want to return this dot is completed minus other dot is completed. Why is it freaking out? Oh, I see. It's freaking out because I'm trying to subtract booleans instead of ints. So we're just going to write another function that converts a boolean to int. So boolean dot to int return. Let's see. I'm just going to take a peek at what it should be. Okay. So yeah, this code seems a little confusing, but this basically refers to either true or false. So if it's true, we want to return 1, otherwise 0. And this is something called an extension function. So basically you can have, you can say the object in the front, and then you can apply the extension function to the back. So it would just be to int. And this would be to int. Nice, and it should be fine. Okay. And now that our model is comparable, we can apply sort. So within our adapter, once we change the completed type, like the status of the cell, we want to actually sort our list. And this is something already built into mutable list. And then at the very beginning, after we add in our task, we should also sort it. And I think I'll need a notify data change as well. So let me just copy that over. Oh, maybe I don't need it? Okay. Let's just rerun it. Task 1, task 2, task 3. Nice. And when I click task 2 and I mark it as completed, it moves to the bottom. And we can move task 1 to the bottom. And if we uncheck task 2, it moves back up to the top. Nice. So this is what we wanted. I'm just going to really quickly fix up the layout, and then we should be done. Let's see. I think this bothered me a little bit. Maybe I want to attach to. Okay, I think this is what I wanted. Or not. Let me actually delete this. Yeah, so basically what I want to do is to left align the recycler view, just because it looks kind of weird to have the list of tasks in the middle. So let's see. I'm not sure. Let me just take a peek. Okay, well, I'm not sure why it's doing that, but it is what it is. Yeah, that can be something that you can figure out on your own if you want to, because I'm too lazy to figure it out. But yeah, that is a demo on how to implement both a list view and a recycler view. And as you can see, implementing a recycler view is very involved. Like, you have to create your model class, your adapter, your custom layout, and then integrate everything into the main activity. And it seems really complex now, but you'll notice as you build more apps that the format to create a recycler view is almost the same. You kind of just modify the same template. So it'll get easier with practice. But yeah, if you have any questions on the homework or how to implement a recycler view, make sure to come to office hours, and thank you.